So, colleagues, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Good evening and welcome everyone to our Regional Council meeting on October the 12th, 2022. I'll now call on Tim Brubaker to please do the roll call.
Thank you. Chair Redmond.
Present.
Councillor Ravanovic.
Present.
Councillor Jaworski.
Here.
Councillor Clark.
Present.
Oh, Councillor Lawrence. We'll try again.
Present.
Pardon me. Councillor Jowett.
Present.
Councillor Erb.
Present.
Councillor Nowak.
Present.
Councillor Kiefer.
Present.
Councillor McGarry.
Present.
Councillor Armstrong.
Present.
Councillor Harris.
Here.
And we have regrets from Councillor Shantz, Councillor Strickland, Councillor Foxton,
Present.
and Councillor Galloway.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to acknowledge the land on which we gather virtually today and physically is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Neutral people. We acknowledge the enduring presence of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land today, their achievements and their contributions to our community. What I have learned from Indigenous peoples is that our relationship to the land should be one of stewardship, not ownership. And I am honored to make this journey with them. I'd now entertain a motion to reconvene an open session. If I could have a mover, moved by Councillor Jaworski, seconded by Councillor Foxton. Please use your icons or indicate with your hand. That is carried. Thank you, colleagues. We are now in open session. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none, our first presentation is a COVID-19 update, and I would ask Dr. Shuli Wong, Commissioner of Public Health and Emergency Services, to provide that update. Welcome, Dr. Wong.
Thank you, Chair Redmond, and good evening, councillors. It will just be me today as Jessie Johals on a well-deserved vacation. So today I will be providing updates on COVID-19, influenza, and monkeypox. Wondering if you could project my slides. I think it's Caitlin, maybe. If not, I'll just go ahead and give the update. So, thank you, Caitlin. Yes. Next slide, please. Thank you. So, starting with COVID-19, so we are seeing a gradual increase in COVID-19 cases in some parts of the province, including in southwestern Ontario. Locally, our wastewater signal remains elevated and plateaued. It does fluctuate up and down, but overall relatively plateaued. I expect, however, with the signals that we are seeing elsewhere in the province, that our wastewater will start to increase soon. Our number of outbreaks and hospitalizations also continue to fluctuate, but remain relatively elevated at this time. As more people head indoors in the coming weeks, I do anticipate that our rates will go up. So staying up to date with your COVID-19 booster doses and getting the flu vaccine are the best ways to protect yourself from serious illness and hospitalization this coming fall and winter. Next slide, please. So your fall or winter booster COVID-19 vaccination is recommended 6 months following a previous dose or infection to maintain optimal levels of protection against severe outcomes of the infection. The Pine Bush Cambridge Vaccine Clinic, which is open 7 days a week, is administering booster doses of the bivalent vaccine by walk-in only. Appointments are also available through the provincial booking portal for the other regional clinic locations, or you can also walk in as capacity allows. And of course, you can get a booster dose of the bivalent vaccine from your local pharmacy. There are many, many pharmacies that continue to offer COVID-19 vaccines. And in the coming weeks, the neighborhood bus will be on the road administering booster doses throughout Waterloo region. Next slide, please. Just wanted to start to provide influenza updates as influenza has arrived in Waterloo region. The influenza virus is already circulating here and elsewhere in Ontario. As of Saturday, October the 8th, there have been 5 cases of influenza reported in Waterloo region. And in Ontario, there have been 116 laboratory cases. So these represent low numbers of cases at this time, but they are expected to increase as the next weeks pass. So the flu vaccine is currently being distributed to certain groups at highest risk, such as those in long-term care, and they will become available soon for the general public. I don't have an exact date at this time, but I expect within a couple of weeks. And that's available for anyone 6 months of age or older. So the influenza vaccine is also your best protection against serious outcomes from influenza infection. And this vaccine will be readily available from a local pharmacy or your family doctor. Next slide, please. My last update will be about monkeypox. We haven't reported any additional cases of monkeypox locally since September. Cases are also declining in Ontario as well as Canada. This will therefore be the last regular council update that I'll provide on monkeypox, but of course, if anything unexpected occurs, I will provide that update to you in a timely manner. And the vaccine is still available for the high-risk groups by appointment at our regional offices in Cambridge and Waterloo. And that completes the updates for this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Wong. Are there any questions? Councillor Foxton.
Thank you, Chair. Shuli, you talked about influenza A and B. Will the vaccination be able to take care of both of them?
Yes, Councillor Foxton. So the vaccine will target the most likely strains of influenza A and B that experts believe will be circulating in our province this fall and winter. Sometimes doesn't turn out to be exactly those strains, but there usually is at least some protection, even if it's not exactly the same strains. So it's always a good idea to get the vaccine, and yes, it would include the most likely influenza A and B ones.
Thank you. And also, there was the flu shot for seniors that was a little bit more potent, or may I say, than the other. Is that readily available this time? There was a shortage last time, so I wondered if it's readily available.
Yeah, we haven't heard of any supply issues at this time. So that, of course, is something we'll continue to monitor. And if there are any issues, I would let council know. But at this time, we're not hearing of any shortages of the vaccines. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Erb.
Thank you. Dr. Wong, what are the hours at 99 Regina, and are they by appointment only, or is that a walk-in?
99 Regina can take both. Appointments are available through the booking site, and but they're usually able to take walk-ins as well, because there's usually sufficient capacity. For the hours, I don't have them on hand, but I know if we Google Waterloo region and get a vaccine, you should get to our website, which will have those hours. I'll just try and pull them up now as we're talking.
So, I can do it. I just had a question today from somebody if they could go there. I'll look it up.
I might actually. I do believe we do have one of our managers responsible for the rollout, Sarita, as well as David, the director, who may be online, may be able to provide that information if they happen to have it on hand. Sorry, I can't see them, but I think they may be
Um,
online.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Wang. Respected Councillor Erb, yeah, so 99 is both like walk-in and by appointment, and the hours mostly is from 8:30 to 4:30, but we have 2 days clinic that will be from 1:30 until 8:30 p.m.
And is that Monday to Friday?
Yes, and we have weekend clinics also. Some clinics are also available on Saturday, but we have our website updated with all this current information for the exact time and days.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councillor Erb. Councillor Bravanovich.
Thanks very much, Chair Redmond, and Dr. Wong. Thanks for the updates today. I guess my question, and it's one that certainly I have, and in talking with others, they have it as well, and just came through a round of COVID not too long ago. And so I know a lot of people, there's a lot of debate around when should you get that next shot. And I'm wondering if there's sort of a general rule of thumb, or is it, patient specific, and everyone should check with their family physician?
Yes, thank you for the question. So for people that have already had their primary series, so that would be 2 doses for most people and 3 doses for those that are immune compromised. When it's time to get your booster dose, the recommended interval is generally 6 months since your last vaccine dose or since you've had an infection. Now, you can get it as early as 3 months after your last vaccine dose or your infection, but it's thought that 6 months will provide a little better duration and strength of response. So that's why generally 6 months is recommended. For some people who are immune compromised or have significant underlying medical conditions, if there's a lot of circulation of COVID-19, their family physician may recommend they try to get it closer to as soon as they become eligible, which is 3 months. And so it is a personal decision. People can get it from as soon as 3 months after the last dose or infection. But in general, it's recommended to wait 6 months after the last dose or infection.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. That's helpful.
Thank you. Councillor Rentz, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Dr. Wong. Hi, Dr. Wong. Good to see you. My question is, at some point, will people be able to get the flu shot at Pine Bush? So be able to get both at the same time?
Right now, the way that flu vaccine has been distributed in the past and has worked well, has generally relied on distribution through pharmacy and family doctors. So because of the variety of different types of COVID vaccines, Pine Bush has not, there isn't a plan at this time to have Pine Bush add influenza to the list of vaccines that it offers. So that isn't something that's being planned at this time. I should also mention that the Pine Bush mass vaccination clinic is actually intended to be a temporary clinic that's put in place to accommodate what we thought would be greater demand at the beginning of the season when many people became eligible for the bivalent vaccine. But we are, monitoring usage, and eventually the plan will be to sunset that clinic again and to return to more regular and sustainable models of vaccine delivery, which would be, through the regular channels such as pharmacy, primary care, and some public health clinics to complement areas in the region where there isn't as good access to the vaccine through pharmacy or primary care.
And I noticed at Pine Bush at the beginning it was by appointment only. Now it's having walk-in as well. And you mentioned if the capacity is there, how successful has Pine Bush been so far?
Pine Bush has, I would say, has been successful in that it's been very accessible for those that have wanted an appointment, or later on when there were less people wanting the vaccine, they were able to open it up directly for walk-in. And in my understanding is, the access has been very good to date, very quick. So right now, Pine Bush, all the regional vaccines are available. All the appointment spots are available either through booking or people can walk in if capacity allows. Pine Bush, however, is the one where it's just walk-in. So they have the capacity to accommodate basically any walk-ins right now. So there's no appointment system there.
Excellent. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wong. I see no further questions, so thank you as always for a very informative update as we continue to move hopefully further away from our pandemic and into an endemic control of COVID. So thank you very much for your continued leadership. There are no petitions. We have a delegation, so I'd like to welcome the co-chairs of the co-conveners for the Anti-Racism Advisory Working Group regarding their final report. And Meredith Radlin is here. And is Donna Dubé here, Meredith, or are you here solo?
I am here solo. Donna sends her regrets. She is still in a lot of pain from her car accident a few weeks ago.
Thank you. Please proceed. You have 10 minutes.
So, good evening, councillors and chair, and thank you for this opportunity to again come and give you the recommendations from the Anti-Racism Advisory Working Group. The recommendations that we submitted in October 2021 were all accepted by council and are in the process of implementation. The recommendations we bring tonight reflect community engagement that began in the past year. So the following recommendations reflect both what we have learned during the 2 years that we have been in existence and what has been expressed by community residents. In its first term, the Anti-Racism Advisory Working Group was able to help the region and community work together to make change in terms of systemic harms. So our recommendations focused on things like hiring practices, police response, and so on. One of the most significant impacts of the ARAWG has been to serve as a conduit between community and the region. And there is a formal terms of reference, but what we did was to create a voice for those living in the region. And our recommendation tonight is that this voice may be known and grow. It's important to note that many living in the region of Waterloo do not see the Anti-Racism Advisory Working Group solely as advisors to council, as is dictated by its current mandate. At the July 19 town hall that we had, there were repeated inquiries as to why the Anti-Racism Advisory Working Group was not responding to grassroots issues such as the encampment and the needs of neighborhood associations. So our two recommendations tonight reflect those community concerns, that the ARAWG continue but with an expanded and evolved mandate, and that the region provide resources to support the operations of the group. We recommend in terms of continuation that we be allowed to continue with the election of the new council, that we be invited to be part of the selection process of any new members, that we are allowed to amend the terms of reference, and that the new members reflect the revised mandate of the ARAWG. We are asking for a revised mandate because we want to have a mandate that allows us to actively engage and communicate with those living in the region from equity deserving groups. So this accountability includes responding to the voices of community collectives and groups and their calls to action. And we would also ask that as part of the orientation of the new regional councillors, that they have a conversation with the ARAWG about their commitment to reconciliation, equity, diversity, and inclusion. It also allows us to start building the trust and relationship that's needed if we are going to be a group that is going to continue to work with the council in the future. For this to happen, we need to have resources from the region of Waterloo. The main message we got from the community was that of communication. And currently the ARAWG has no means of communicating with the community other than through Engage Waterloo region. And so right now in our recommendations, we're going to ask that this group, as it continues, and we are assuming that it is going to be continued, that staff be provided to support us in the use of the digital communication platforms used by the region for communicating to the larger population. And that the region provide resources so that the ARAWG can create written and published communications with the larger community, and that resources be provided for regular town halls to ensure that the community continuously feels involved in the work of the ARAWG. It is our learning and our feeling that the community would like to have the opportunity to give input and to reflect on our actions on an ongoing basis. And we think that, well, we know that to have reconciliation and equity, diversity, and inclusion work that is not just performative but meaningful, it means that we do have to listen to the voices of the community. We have to listen to the voices of the people who are affected by these issues. So as the region moves towards becoming a municipality steeped in reconciliation and anti-racist practice, it must be commended for being the only municipality in Canada to have a director of reconciliation. It must be commended for having enacted all of the recommendations that were given in October 2021. And moving on, we know that it will require courage to learn from history, courage to ignore self-interest, and courage to recognize that change is difficult but necessary. We believe that if the region of Waterloo is committed to reconciliation, equity, diversity, and inclusion, it must abandon past practice and craft new ways to ensure that it responds to diverse community needs. A revised mandate, which is what we are asking for, would reflect the intersectionalities of equity-deserving groups and enable the region of Waterloo to move forward in all elements of reconciliation, equity, diversity, and inclusion. So we ask that you openly support the renaming or new naming of landmarks, roads, and other public entities to reflect a more inclusive and less colonized perspective, to stop evicting people from encampments before allocating regional land for permanent accommodation, to ensure that any response to encampment issues, including security, be a civilian-led response, to provide additional funding to grassroots organizations and outreach groups working with encampments, to inform the new ARAWG of the work of the above-mentioned civilian team, as promised in a conversation with the current chair and CAO. And we ask that you assign specific outcomes for long and short-term goals. And I know there may be the question as to why we would be asking for these things if we're an anti-racist advisory working group. But our work of the past 2 years and our conversations with the community have shown that everything is interconnected. Many of the people who are homeless are indigenous, racialized. Many of the issues around mental health, emergency crisis response affect the group that we are talking about. And so we think this mandate needs to be expanded in the way that we have asked. Thank you.
So Meredith, thank you very much for your presentation, and please give Donna our best wishes for a speedy recovery. But I want to thank both of you for your leadership, as well as the members of the Anti-Racism Advisory Working Group for your hard work over these past 2 years. Doing this type of high-profile, timely, community-focused work is never easy, but I'm sure it was particularly challenging given the limitations of the pandemic and the need to meet virtually. The Anti-Racism Advisory Working Group has made a number of recommendations to Council in the past 2 years. These recommendations have helped us move forward in significant ways, including through the hiring of Fazia Beg, the region's Director of Equity, Diversity and Inclusion, and more recently, Paula Whitlow, the region's Director of Truth and Reconciliation. This internal capacity and expertise will be critical for future work. This is an important journey for Council and the community to embark on, and it's obviously a journey that's still in its infancy. As my colleagues will notice, there is a substantial amount of thought and community engagement that has gone into the recommendations that you've just presented us. I would suggest that we accept this report and forward the recommendation to the next term of Council. I would hope that the perspectives of new regional councillors, the feedback they've received while knocking on doors and through candidate forums, and critically, these recommendations provide a strong foundation so that the next council and the larger community can advance anti-racism, equity, diversity, inclusion, and truth and reconciliation. So colleagues, I would suggest that we would receive this report and move it forward to the next council. I don't know if there's any questions. Councillor Clark. Thank you. Okay, you're seconding that motion. Councillor Bravanovich.
Yeah, well, thanks, Chair Redmond. And really, I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank Meredith for the work that she and the rest of the committee did. This has been important work, and no doubt there were some exciting conversations, but probably some challenging conversations as well along the way. And I think it certainly will give the next council some things to reflect on. And I want to thank you for your leadership on this work as well.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bravanovich. I have always characterized the activities of the Anti-Racism Advisory Working Group as authentic but sometimes uncomfortable conversations. These are challenging issues and something that we need to continue to work on with the community. So I see no further comments, so I would ask you the motion has been moved and seconded. If you... So Councillor Clark actually moved that motion, and Councillor Vanovich has seconded it. Thank you very much. So it now has been moved and seconded and already voted on by most of you. Please use your icons to vote. I'll accept a raised hand if you're in the chamber. That is carried. Thank you, colleagues. And again, Meredith, thank you very much for providing the leadership that you have within this group. It's very important work, and we benefit from all the hard work, so thank you. We'll now have a motion to approve the minutes from the previous meetings as listed. Are there any questions or comments? It's 7.1 through 7.6. It's previous council meetings, and if I could have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Foxton, seconded by Councillor Nowak. Please use your icons to vote. That is carried, colleagues. There is a communications package that everyone received electronically. Are there any questions or comments on anything in the communications package? I would now entertain a motion to go into committee of the whole to consider reports. If I could have a moved by Councillor Armstrong, seconded by Councillor Rentz. Please use your, Councillor Kiefer, were you moving something or do you have a question? Please use your icons to vote yes or no.
I was just moving something.
That is carried, so we are now in committee of the whole. The first report is 10.1. It's a finance report. It is the Ottawa Street improvements to Fisher Hallman Road to International Place in the city of Kitchener. Mr. Dyer is here to answer any questions. I'm seeing none. If I could have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Clark. Seconded by Councillor Kiefer. I'm going to use the hangover from when you tried to second it. Please use your icons to vote yes or no. Colleagues, committee report, admin and finance, October 4th. We will now vote to approve the summary of administration and finance meeting on that date. Moved by Councillor Jowett, seconded by Councillor Erb, that admin and finance summary dated October 6, 2022 be adopted as follows, that the regional municipality direct the regional clerk to issue a public notice of his intention. And this is about procedural bylaws. That is carried. Well done, clerk's team. Next agenda item is Planning and Works Committee summary. If I could have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Foxton, seconded by Councillor Armstrong. Please use your icons, and this is that Planning and Works summary dated October 4th be adopted. And it's approving a recommended design alternative to the proposed roundabout at Fisher Hallman. And that actually goes, it has parts A to G as well. That is carried. Colleagues, Chief Administrative Officer's report. Nothing. I have no reports. Regional Clerk. So, other matters under Committee of the Whole is a verbal update on encampments, and I would now call on Peter Sweeney, Commissioner of Community Services, for a verbal update on encampments. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My report this evening will focus on one element of our interim homelessness plan that was endorsed and directed back in August of this year around the provision of a hybrid encampment in Waterloo region to serve those who are currently experiencing homelessness. And the area of focus for this report this evening is related to a commitment that we made then and continue to put front and center in this work, and that is to engage and include the voice of those who are currently experiencing chronic homelessness, and specifically in this case, currently choosing to live in unsanctioned encampments across Waterloo region. I want to acknowledge that regional staff and our partners have been hard at work and diligently working through a very significant process to identify and evaluate sites. I'm not bringing that information here forward. There's a bit more work to do, and we will be bringing that back as soon as possible. But I do want to update Council on some work that we conducted last week in relation to talking to those who are currently residing in encampments to get their perspectives on how we might move this work forward. And so I have a slide deck here. It's a relatively short slide deck. I'll ask Caitlin to move to the next slide. So what we did last week, and I want to thank regional staff who on a regular basis, along with our partners, are engaging with those who are currently living in large encampments across Waterloo region. And we went out last week, and as you can see on the slide, our staff connected with a number of folks who are currently residing in encampments, and by their count, at the time that they arrived at the encampments, both at 100 Victoria, in Victoria Park, and at 150 Main in Cambridge, the three largest encampments that we're aware of at the moment. Their estimates there was about 100 people on site, and 72 of those individuals chose to speak with us and give us some perspectives. And so I just want to walk you through what we heard today, is because that will continue to inform the work that we're doing. And I want to also acknowledge we're learning how to really center and bring this voice into this work. As we heard loud and clear from the community, that's an important element of this. We've heard loud and clear from experts in this space that involving and centering lived experience and the voice of lived experience is really, really important. So we're getting better at this. Again, this remains imperfect, but I think it's an important element that I'd like to report on publicly. So if we could just move to the next slide, please. So I won't go through all of these, but we asked 6 questions, and we really wanted to get at the heart of, rather than bringing forward specific locations, which we didn't actually have the ability to do because we haven't finished the work there. We really wanted to get a sense so that as we bring forward a final set of locations to consider, that we have an understanding of, to the degree that we can, how will these, what's important to those who are currently living in encampments. And I guess the real question is, if we build it, will they come? And what we've seen here, what the questions we asked were about location, access to services, transit, and the like. And so these were the questions that were asked. And again, this will go on the portal, so they can be reviewed at a later time. So I won't go through and read them. But if I could just go to the next screen, Caitlin, I'll show you what. So as you can see here, we had a number of folks. This was where. When we looked at it, when we rolled up, we had about 72% of those who were living in an encampment that day or were on site responded. We do also have some further demographics, as the delegation referenced. We do know in our first survey of encampment residents that approximately 20% of those currently living in encampments identify as Indigenous, and so the work that we are continuing to do. It's important to remember that one of the solutions that we put forward is the development of an Indigenous-led and Indigenous-focused transitional supportive housing as one of our offerings that we're continuing to pursue with community. You can just go to the next slide, please. And so what we wanted to understand around location is to ask folks their willingness to relocate. And you can see here that the majority of those who responded, both in Cambridge at 150 Main and those in Kitchener, would move if the only option available to them was in a different city. So I think what that tells us is that we have some options we need to be considering an all of community response to this work, and for some folks, moving from one area of the region to another, if that's the option that's provided to them, a majority would do so. The next slide I would like to show you is we talked a little bit, we wanted to understand the feeling of encampment residents around proximity to downtown cores and proximity to services. As we know, social services in this community and most communities in this province, in this country, tend to be located in our cores. But we also wanted to understand the willingness of those currently living in encampments, if they were offered the opportunity to live in a hybrid managed encampment, how might they access those services? And you can see that 70%, 68% would walk and 90% would take transit. So I think it's important that as we consider this work going forward, that we understand and take this into consideration. The next slide, please, Caitlin. We asked, we indicated that our plan, although we're still working through the operational model, that obviously the plan is that this managed encampment would have access to, to washrooms, showers, food, community space, and what else was going to be important to them. And you can see their responses are pretty similar to what the responses I think to anybody would be looking for, a safe, secure place to live. And, what we will do with this information is help inform where we take our evaluation criteria, our evaluation of the sites that we're looking at across Waterloo region. And I think what strikes me in this data set is that for a number of people who are currently choosing to live in encampments, who we know have been offered shelter space and other options, who have declined, that's not something that fits their where they want to be right now. It looks to be that, as we, heard loud and clear through the summer, that this council endorsing a hybrid encampment option is a good one, is one that we need to continue to pursue. And for a significant majority of individuals currently living in encampments, this is an option that a majority of them would consider. And I think that that bodes well for the work that we're doing and will continue to inform the work going forward. I'm happy to take any questions or feedback on this.
Thank you very much. Peter, are there any questions? Councillor Vervanovich.
Thanks very much. And I think to begin with, I just want to acknowledge and thank you, Peter, for the work that you and your team have been doing over the last little while. I know this is difficult work, it's complex work, but it's work that needs to be done in order to deal with a challenging issue impacting this growing group of residents, as we've seen by the point in time counts over the last while. I'm finding this report really encouraging. I mean, first of all, I think, as we strive to move towards a rights-based approach, I think engaging those with lived experience is important, because one of the things that we know is we're more likely to have success in terms of dealing with this if people feel some degree of ownership in terms of the direction that you're going. So that's certainly been very encouraging going forward. So thank you for that. Is there, as you look at sort of the responses that you had, is there anything that sort of surprised you in the mix of things?
Well, I mean, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what to expect. Again, I want to acknowledge that this is work that we haven't done in this community before through a managed perspective. And again, we're all learning, particularly at a staff level, on how to do this well. And we're going to continue to bump along in that process to center that voice as much as possible. I was encouraged by the fact that a number of people who are currently living in encampments were willing to speak to us, that are willing to engage in this conversation. So I think the response rate is something that I was encouraged by. And I guess the other thing that I'm encouraged by is this would suggest that we have, some options available to us in terms of where we end up finally locating a hybrid management encampment somewhere in Waterloo region. So overall, I was encouraged by, again, the response rate and the flexibility that we apparently can bring to this conversation.
Yeah, no, and I would agree with you. I think I was surprised by some of that, the numbers in terms of that openness on one hand, and then when I reflected on it some more, it was sort of consistent with what I've heard from the organizers of a Better Tent City, which is one model. I mean, what we're talking about is a bit of a different model. So in some ways, it's, I guess, that their learnings are reflected in some of these responses. So that probably gives us some comfort that in fact, there's some consistency there, which is encouraging.
Agreed.
So again, thank you, and I look forward to when further information will come forward.
Welcome. Thank you.
Councillor Jowett, please go ahead.
Thanks so much, Chair Redmond. And just one more time, I want to reiterate, it's probably the last chance I'll get to say this, the importance that we represent our entire 630,000 residents, recognizing the complexities we've had to manage for multiple years and the choices that have been taken away from us at times and left us with little opportunity for creative solutions. But staff still keep finding a way through that, and I'm hopeful and grateful for that. In all of this, we continue to remember that high acuity, high density populations present just as many challenges to the neighboring residences, and we must be just as empathetic to that plight and try to find our way to manage unintended consequences, inclusive of providing supports and security when we do engage in these solutions that do promote high density, high acuity folks. So I just want to make sure we get that heard.
Peter, do you want to respond, or is that more just a statement? Okay, thank you. Councillor Clark, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. After after Council made the decision to pursue a managed encampment, there was some conjecture in the media about whether people who are currently using encampments, because they reject the housing stability system, whether they would in fact accept a managed encampment, or whether that just the terminology around management would be too much of a turnoff for them. That was the theory. It doesn't sound like you heard that from people, and I'm wondering whether you can speak to that, and to what extent do people understand that a managed encampment is not the same as an encampment that isn't managed?
Thank you, Councillor Clark. I guess the first thing I want to acknowledge is you can see in the results that we did not get 100% of those we spoke to who agreed that this is something that they would take advantage of. So I want to just acknowledge that this is just one potential solution amongst many that we need to consider. It is one that is imperfect on many levels, regardless of where this lands and how it's operated. There will be pros and cons to this work. So I guess that would be the first thing, is it's not perfect for everybody. And then the second part of your question, Councillor Clark, I think in terms of the understanding, I really can't speak to how an individual is going to interpret the difference between perhaps where they are now and what this might look like, although our staff was deliberate to talk about, what this might look like. And I want to also acknowledge, I think it's important that, we do know that, the correlation between what people say they will do in a given circumstance and what they actually do is not always that predictive. So I think this is a good data set. I think it allowed us to go and build further trust with the people that we're trying to serve. We should use it to make an informed decision, and we're going to have to keep learning along the way what works and what doesn't for some folks in these circumstances.
Councillor Clark, any further questions?
No question. I just I think, like Councillor Vanderich, I was pleasantly surprised to see how receptive people would be to traveling a short distance if that was necessary. I hadn't anticipated that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor McGarry, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And, Councillor Clark ably asked some of the questions that I was looking forward to asking. I guess my question would be, and this is important to those watching, is we're not totally full with shelters tonight. So if I were a community member looking in on tonight's meeting, I would be asking whether those in the encampments were considering entering shelter, or some of the other options that outreach workers have provided for them.
So on any given night, Councillor McGarry, over the last week, our census across the system would indicate there would be approximately 20 to 25 beds available in the system across Waterloo region. And by our count, well, even by the count from the survey last week, there were 100 people on site across 3 large encampments. So we have a challenge with access to the full system as it is. And we do know that many of these individuals have been offered and are consistently offered opportunities to go into shelter, and those opportunities are declined. We have had some success with some folks, specifically at 150 Main in Cambridge, where we have a relatively smaller encampment relative to the 2 in downtown Kitchener. There have been offers that have been accepted, and people have transitioned off of that encampment. And then there are those that for their own individual reasons, the existing shelter system and shelter experience is not one that they choose, which is why we've added the hybrid encampment. Again, I don't believe it's a panacea, but I do believe it's an important tool in our toolkit, and we're going to learn from it as we go along, Councillor McGarry. And there will always, I believe, be individuals that whose unique needs are not going to always be met by everything we have to offer, and we're going to have to figure that out as we go along.
Councillor McGarry, any further questions?
Thank you.
I'm seeing no further questions, so I too would like to thank you, Peter, and your team for all your hard work, been sustained over months and months, and we'll continue to unravel this Gordian knot and find out all the solutions. Although they're imperfect, we'll keep finding ones that look like they're effective. So thank you very much.
Welcome.
I would now entertain a motion for the Committee of the Whole to rise and Council to resume. If I could have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Nowak, seconded by Councillor Jaworski. Please use your icons to vote. That is carried, colleagues. We are now resumed as council. I would entertain a motion to adopt the proceedings of the Committee of the Whole. Moved by Councillor Vrvanovich, seconded by Councillor Kiefer. Please use your icons to vote. That's carried, colleagues. So we have no motions, no notices of motion, no unfinished business, no other business. Any questions? Seeing none, I'll now entertain a motion to enact the bylaws first, second, and third reading. It's bylaw 22-050, moved by Councillor Erb, seconded by Councillor Harris. Councillor Erb, do you have a question, or you're moving?
I didn't get my hand up soon enough. I want to comment. I can't even help but notice the contented smile on Councillor Jaworski this evening, and I'm sure it has to do with the number of days remaining, but it's just so obvious.
Thank you, but I'm going to interpret you also as moving. As moving. Yeah,
I will.
Thank you, and it was seconded by Councillor Harris, I believe. So please use your icons to vote. This is that the bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of Regional Municipality of Waterloo at this meeting held on October 12th, 2022, be read a first, second, and third time, finally passed, and number 22-050 be signed by the regional chair and regional clerk and sealed with the regional seal. That is carried. I would now entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Harris, seconded by Councillor Foxton. Please use your icons to vote. That is carried, colleagues, and can I just reflect on how wonderful it is to see this many faces in the council chamber and